actually hate hills I hate hills in general. Hills are the only workout that I prefer outdoor.
Episode 985 of Diz Runs Radio is a quick tip episode. Today's quick tip, Treadmill Talk Part 2, talking treadmill workouts and potential injury concerns. So today, Thessalay is back, round 2, talking about running on the treadmill, and she's back again this week. Spoiler alert, she's going to be back again next week as well. I think I might have mentioned that last week. So if you've been paying attention, you've been following along, you know that she's here to answer some of the questions and talk on some different treadmill-related topics that were posed in the Facebook group. I don't know, I guess it was last month, but as we're recording this, it was like a week ago, so a little bit of a time warp situation. But if you missed last week's episode, we talked about kind of some reasons why the treadmill might be something that might make a lot of sense, might be a necessary evil at time to time, or maybe even you might just enjoy it. And we also talked about ways to kind of work through any boredom that you might have, which is a very common excuse / reason to not run on the treadmill. It's just boring. I feel like that's the case, at least. We also got into some mindset stuff. So a lot of good things back last week, episode 983. If you haven't checked it out yet, it's literally 2 episodes back in your feed right now. You can check it out. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about workouts, injuries, things like that. So let's get down to business. Thessalay, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again today.
Hello, so excited. Thanks for having me.
Still on the treadmill, no surprise there. And again, guys, if you haven't connected with Thessalay yet, you can find her. She's in the Facebook groups. You can find her on Facebook pretty easily there. You can also find her on the Instagrams at Thessalay 26.2, at THESSALY 26.2 on Instagram. Any treadmill-specific questions, and if you missed her interview, her full-length episode on the show is episode 898, if you're so inclined to want to go back in the archives and check that one out. So, Thessalay, today, talking about kind of some two main topics today. We'll see where we branch into and what other things that we stumble upon along the way, as is always the case. But talking about workouts to do on the treadmill, considerations. I have some thoughts on it, but before I kind of dive into some of my maybe biases, but definitely some thoughts on doing workouts on the treadmill, not just like an easy run or a long run or things like that, but, some type of speed workouts, tempo workouts, things like that. What are your thoughts when it comes to doing workouts on the treadmill?
Yeah, I actually love a good treadmill workout. Pretty much anything you can do outside on a track or on the road, you can translate into a treadmill run. And the bonus factor is you can dial it in and go at that locked-in pace. You're not second-guessing. You're not doing anything that's not surprising, or that is surprising to you. And with hill control, you have complete control over the hills that you're doing. If you want to get a good hill workout, that's probably the best case for a treadmill-specific workout is creating a hill workout for yourself. And speed workouts, too, are awesome. When I first got into running probably 9 or 10 years ago, I started on a treadmill and I didn't even realize, I didn't research running at all, didn't know what I was really doing, but I would just go at my solid, steady pace for a while and then either get bored with that or want to push myself a little bit or get really upset about something that I was thinking about. So I would run as hard as I could. And then looking back, I'm like, oh, I was doing speed workouts without even knowing it. So hopping up the pace from whatever 0.0 to whatever 0.5, because I don't want to give specific numbers just because everyone's pace varies. But and then going at that pace for a minute or two and then backing off a little bit back to your steady pace. Right.
Yeah, it's definitely something where I feel like as a rather devout non-treadmill kind of guy, when it comes to workouts, it's hard pressed to find a workout. Like if you're trying to lock in a pace and cruise there, if you're trying to feel a goal pace for a race or maybe like a tempo effort or anything like that, where or even any type of intervals or sprints or anything like that, where the goal is to run at XYZ pace for a certain amount of time or distance. I don't know. I mean, I on the one hand, I would say you'd be hard pressed to have a better option than a treadmill because it's going to force you to be at a certain pace. But on the other hand, and here's where my bias comes in. Like, it's great when you can do it on the treadmill, but then when race day rolls around, you don't necessarily know what it's like to create that pace on your own because you don't have the assistance of the treadmill. So for somebody who has done and is proud to talk about doing so many runs, so many miles, so many workouts, pretty much everything on the treadmill except for getting out and pushing it on race day, kind of how do the treadmill workouts, do you have any issues with translating paces and things gained and learned from the treadmill to the road during a race?
So to be quite honest, I usually don't follow any kind of race plan. Don't really try to set too many goals for races, because races at this point in my life, in my running career as it is, races are just about getting another finish done so I can complete my marathon goal. So as far, like, that's probably bad advice, but I usually go into a race just like, okay, let's celebrate running. Let's get a good outdoor experience. Let's get a medal at the end. But I do have a watch now so that if I am worried about how long I'm running, or like if I'm going to finish on time or whatever before the finish line closes down, which I haven't even gotten close to, thankfully, yet. But so I would say it probably doesn't translate perfectly. Well, I know it doesn't translate perfectly, but if you have trained your body and trained your fast twitch muscles to be able to run harder and faster and do some sprints on the treadmill, that'll translate. It's not like your body doesn't know that feeling of pushing hard and doesn't know how to run fast, because if you've done it on the treadmill, you can do it outside. It's not going to just disappear.
No, that's very much a great point. And I mean, it kind of falls into that same logic, of like, well, if I'm doing a marathon, what do I need to do quarter-mile repeats for? Well, because you're working that muscle system. You're working that like it's you're not trying to practice that pace at 400-meter repeats that you're trying to run for 26.2 miles or 13.1 miles or whatever. So yeah, I can see that. So one of my questions that nobody asked, but this is always one that I kind of wrestle with when it comes to some of the athletes I coach. Maybe they're on the treadmill for a while. Maybe they prefer the treadmill. I think I have a couple of those crazy folks like yourself, and then certainly some folks that either in the heat of the summer, maybe because of air quality issues at certain times of the year, maybe in the cold of the winter, they find themselves inside looking for something to do to maybe fight the boredom, have like a good workout to do. And like you said, hills are great; you can control the ups. But do you have any? And I don't know that there's an answer, and maybe there isn't. But any suggestions for simulating even something that closely resembles a downhill? Because I feel like that practice and running downhill can be pretty important if you're going to run a hillier course or a hillier route. I don't know. Are there any good treadmill options for practicing a downhill situation?
Yeah, there is the treadmill I started on at the gym. I'll have to look it up and I'll send you a message with it so you can post it with this in the show notes. But there are treadmills that have a pretty significant decline feature, which is awesome. So you can go down to negative 0.3 for sure, and some probably go down to negative 0.6. So there are options. Those kind of go into a higher price range if you're looking to purchase a treadmill. But as far as like downhill for the standard treadmill, there's not really, but that's not to say that going from a significant incline down to a decline down to a flat surface isn't noticed by your body. So you are training those muscles, maybe not as significantly as if you were doing a decline treadmill run, but there are options. Yeah. So don't let that stop you.
No, totally. And it's one of those things, like it's a trade-off, right? Like for whatever reason that you're on the treadmill, like you got to do the best you can with what you've got. And so you can get some good climbing in. You can get something that depending on the treadmill, again, like you said, maybe you can get some slight downhill, maybe even some significant downhill. And sometimes maybe you just got to play between up and flat and kind of, feel the difference between that. But that's at least it's something, it's not nothing. So we'll take that. What about short and like short-ish and hard repeats? Because and again, maybe it's a treadmill specific. Some treadmills probably better than others. But again, might be talking price considerations at that point. But like even if you're I don't want to necessarily say numbers, but like you're a 4-hour marathon or a 5-hour marathon or something like that. But you're doing like a good, hard, all-out, like 1-minute sprint type of situation. Like there's no reason that. Or I don't want to say there's no reason, but there's every reason that you very well could be running faster than what some treadmills can go up to. So do you find that has that been a problem that you've dealt with to where maybe you can't go as hard for the type of intervals that you would want? So you got to scale it different. Like how do you manage, I guess, when if you've ever encountered a situation like that?
Yeah. So there are pretty high pace limits for how fast you can go on a treadmill, unless you have like a $200 Costco treadmill or something. I'm not even sure if they have those, but most treadmills will go to 12, 13, 14 miles per hour. And that's like a 5-minute pace for 12 miles an hour, I think. So if you're running faster than 5-minute pace, then you might need to invest in a really upper range treadmill. But I've never experienced a treadmill outrunning me, because the one that I used went up to 15 miles an hour, and I can't sustain that pace for longer than like 20 seconds. Yeah. And that was like once or twice in my life. So and that one, kind of from the coaching perspective, like even if your treadmill that you have at the gym or whatever, like if it quote unquote only goes up to 10 miles per hour, which I feel like those are the ones where like you can definitely push the limit on. Like coaching wise, like just change the workout a little bit. If you're supposed to do 1-minute repeats, do 2-minute repeats, do 3-minute repeats. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're not going to be going at that top end speed for long enough where it becomes you can't maintain that speed long enough to where it becomes a limiting factor. So now you can settle in at 9.5 or 9.0 or whatever is on the treadmill that the treadmill can handle. And, you just tweak the workout a little bit. You're still going to get 99% of the benefit. So, Yeah. And a 10-mile, sorry.
No, go ahead.
A 10.0 on a treadmill, like if you're doing miles per hour, that's a 6-minute mile. I don't know if that really translates well or like if people do the math that quickly, but with the hours and years of time I've spent on the treadmill, I pretty much have the whole mile per hour into minute pace memorized. I know 8.6 is just under a 7-minute mile. Yep. So just so you guys know about what the paces translate to for miles per hour. Like a 10.0 is a 6-minute mile. So if you can hold that and you can hold it for a mile, go for it.
It's pretty good. So, and I think that brings another good point. If you're going to be doing some running on the treadmill, that's not just like an easy pace type of run. If you're doing a workout, like take a few minutes, and if it's like if you're not going to commit them all to memory, or maybe math isn't your finest subject, like you can find a quick pace calculator and take a sticky note and just write down, a handful of numbers, like Thessalay said, 6-minute pace. 6 miles an hour would be 10-minute pace. So that's an easy one. 12-minute pace is 5 miles per hour. And just write down a handful of those and have them on a sticky note on the treadmill right there, so you can at least be in the ballpark of the paces that you would like to run or that you're targeting, things like that. If it's not perfect, it's okay. It's okay. Just get a good workout in and don't sweat every last detail. Like just get sweat, but just get a good workout in and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Yes.
What's your last question on workouts? Then we'll try to switch over to injury stuff before we run out of too much time for today. But what's your favorite work? I guess maybe hills. Is that what you mentioned, or is there something else that you like even more so than doing hills on the treadmill?
I actually hate hills I hate hills in general.
Right.
Hills are the only workout that I prefer outdoor, like during race day.
Wow, there we go. You heard it here first. Thessalay would rather run outside if she's going to run on hills than run on the treadmill.
Yeah. But as far as workout, I really like tricking my body into running speed workouts. So intervals, I guess. So one that instantly comes to mind is do like a 1/4 mile warm up or like steady pace, and then hammer it for 3/4 mile, and then simmer down for like a 1/4 mile. So I'm not sure how to explain that other than what I'm saying, but like go slow for a 1/4 mile, go really, really fast for 3/4 of a mile and then keep doing that for as long as I feel like.
Right. I mean, any type of interval. It's just an interval. You can create it, different rules that you want to set, but that's
this
the name
is
of the
my
game.
naivety coming into play where I'm like, I actually don't know that much about running.
Hey, it doesn't matter. You enjoy it. You find a way to do it. Like that's the name of the game. I guess I know I said one last question on workouts, but one other one that I got a feeling that might be on somebody's mind. And I feel like the answer is kind of what we've already said, just adjust and like you just got to make the best of the situation when this is the what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with doing workouts on the treadmill, don't let this be the thing that trips you up. The lag time between when you press the button and when the treadmill belt catches up, whether you're increasing or decreasing, any things that you found to kind of not make that an issue, or is it just as simple as just don't let that be your excuse that it takes 4 seconds for it to catch up to the right speed or whatever it happens to be?
Yeah, I think anticipating that is the most key factor. So when you push it up to, like, let's say you're going to go for a 10-minute mile or 10 miles per hour, so a 6-minute mile, like, know in your mind it'll take 5 to 10 seconds for it to catch up to you. So just anticipating that is probably my best piece of advice. And if you're really hurting and want to slow down, but anticipate having to run kind of quick for a little bit, like a couple extra seconds, then immediately stopping.
Or just jump onto the rails and that works too.
Definitely. Safety first.
Yes, safety first. Good transition. It's almost like you're a pro at this, Thessalay. So shifting gears a little bit before we wrap up today's quick tip. Injury considerations, and this was one that definitely had a couple folks talked about. Hilda stands out, Hannah, Kelly, maybe a few folks that talked about various injuries and things that seem to crop up maybe a little bit more often when they run on the treadmill versus when they run outside. Any thoughts or any experience, anything that you've kind of learned to maybe help avoid injuries, or any reasons that you could think of why that might be something that some of the folks have mentioned as an issue? Yeah,
so something that immediately came to mind when I first read those questions is your body's not used to that stride length, because your stride does kind of adjust, I think, when you're on a treadmill and the softer surface. So that's kind of where the quads and hamstrings and calves, I think, is what they mentioned. That's where it can become a little bit of an issue. So probably warm up to it, and the more consistent you are, the more those muscles and your mechanics will start to adjust and recognize those as doable things. I'm not sure if that's a really straightforward answer, but I think because I have the opposite experience where I'm way more prone to like plantar or a shin splint when I'm outside. So I think it's just your body's not quite used to the softer surface. But that being said, it is a lot easier on your knees. Right. In my experience anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that we don't necessarily think of, or at least wouldn't be the first thing that a lot of people would think of, is that it might seem like it's still a hard surface. I mean, and obviously it is to a certain extent. It's still a hard surface, but it's not the same force-wise as running on asphalt or concrete or things like that. So there is a little bit difference there, which is gonna, it changes some of the force situation as far as like, and you might think, oh well, it's gonna be less force, and it might well be. But if your stride's a little bit off, if things are a little bit different than what you're used to, it's just putting that force maybe somewhere else. So it's not. I wouldn't say it's uncommon in either situation to do a lot of stuff inside and you go outside and have some problems, like you mentioned, or vice versa. If you do a lot of stuff outside and then all of a sudden you find yourself for a few weeks, because it's negative 47 degrees on the tundra, and you're not like Lesterberg, who's just still going to go out and run in shorts in that weather, but he's actually going to maybe run inside. All of a sudden, it's just things are a little bit different, hits that stress points a little bit differently. Another thing that I know I've heard of being a factor, I know I've talked about it as well, but while we're on the injury subject, and feel free to chime in if there's anything else you want to add to this, Thessalay, but like when you're running on the treadmill deck, especially if you run on the same treadmill every day, like if it's your treadmill at home, or if you always run on the same treadmill at the gym, like in theory, your footfall every time your right foot hits the ground, every time your left foot hits the ground is pretty much in the exact same place. And so, like if it's perfectly flat, or even if it's not perfectly flat, you're always hitting at the same place, versus when you're out on the road, you're out on a trail, you're out even on the sidewalk, like there's always those little subtle variances that aren't enough that we can consciously notice the difference, but like they're there, and our bodies know the difference, and your foot hits a little bit differently or whatever. So sometimes that doesn't, those little changes in force to move the force points around to maybe prevent some of those injuries might be more of a factor on the treadmill as well. So, I'm just spitballing here, and again, you chime in, but like maybe that's where you want to play with a little bit of some different speeds instead of just locking in and cruising. Play with, picking it up by a few tenths and down by a few tenths every so often, because that's going to change your stride length. Same thing with the elevation. Bump it up by 0.5%, bump it back down. Just play with some things so that you're mixing up your form a little bit. You're mixing up your gait, and maybe that can help you stay healthy if you're going to be on the treadmill for an extended period of time. Yeah, definitely a great point, because you're right. It is the same exact place, give or take like half an inch. So, yeah, that's a good point. Good deal. Good deal. Well, obviously injuries are a loaded topic, and even for, I always struggle with how much I want to get into it, because there's so many variables from one person to the next, and even so many variables within one person's situation that it's hard to dive too deep into. But there's a couple of thoughts when it comes to dealing with injuries, maybe trying to avoid injuries when it comes to the treadmill. And maybe the most important thing is, just because you run on the treadmill doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing, or you can get away with being lazy on your foam rolling, your stretching, things like that, because it's still running, and we still need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves, which again, I do as I say, not as I do when it comes to the foam rolling, the yoga, all that kind of good stuff sometimes. Yeah, definitely. And definitely I've noticed in the last couple of years, as I've gotten a little bit older, take it like 2 to 3 minutes minimum to stretch, even if it's just your calves and your quads and your arms. Yep. Like, it makes a difference. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there we go, guys. What do you think? What kind of workouts do you enjoy doing? Any injury questions related to the treadmill? Let me know at DizRuns on Twitter, at DizRuns on Instagram. You can also send an email, as always, to dizruns@gmail.com. You can also head over to the show notes for today, dizruns.com/985. There'll be some memes, there'll be some GIFs, there'll be some links, of course. And you can also have that comment section down at the bottom to leave me whatever you want. Comment section on YouTube. You can also ask Thessalay any kind of workout-specific questions that I could probably try to figure out, but I don't have any experience doing workouts on the treadmill. I'll just go ahead and say that. I haven't done a workout on a treadmill. I've run a couple times on the treadmill maybe in the last decade, but I haven't done a workout on the treadmill probably in the last 20 years, probably since I was in high school. So if you got workout questions, hit up Thessalay on Instagram at Thessalay26.2. Also find her on Facebook. And I guess that's where we'll wrap this one up. So if you've got friends that are getting ready to get on the treadmill, if you're going to get ready to get on the treadmill, trying to mix it up a little bit with a workout, we got some options for you. Hit that share button, spread the word if you're so inclined. And until next time, y'all, be well. Take good care. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk soon, all right? See you.